Welcome, friends. You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today, April 30th, 2026, we're going to break down one of the most action-packed operational pictures we've seen in weeks. The volume of significant events today is genuinely extraordinary. Multiple front sectors are reporting major map corrections. The Middle East is unfolding a scenario that could reshape the global energy market, and the silence on the Zaporizhzhia sector speaks far louder than any official statement. So settle in, this one's going to be dense and straight to the point. Before we dive in, a big ask. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do it right now and make sure you hit the bell icon. YouTube has been aggressively suppressing this kind of content in its recommendations, and the algorithms work against military analytical channels. Only an engaged audience, one that receives notifications and actually watches the videos, keeps us afloat. Every view, every like, every comment is direct support for this channel, and I genuinely appreciate every single one. A sincere and special thank you to the channel's sponsors and to everyone who has chosen to support us through super thanks. It's not just encouraging, it makes a real difference. It lets us spend more time preparing material, work with additional sources, and deliver deeper analysis. If you'd like to join in supporting the channel, the button is right below the video. Thank you enormously. Now, let's get to it. Sumy direction. The second defensive line is being broken. Let's start with what is arguably the most dynamic sector of the past 24 hours, the Sumy direction, which in just a matter of weeks has transformed from a peripheral theater into one of the central priorities of Russia's 2026 military campaign. Here's what's happening. The Russian Ministry of Defense, together with the North Troop Grouping, today reported an advance and significant improvement of positions in the area of the settlement of Kharkiv. This isn't just another line in a daily briefing. It's a strategically significant correction that needs to be understood in its broader context. If you've been following the Sumy offensive from the beginning, you'll recall that the first defensive line of the city of Sumy effectively ran along Vuhledar and the border zone. After Russian forces completed the battle for that first line and pushed Ukrainian units back, pressure shifted to the second defensive line. That line included a series of settlements: Kostyantynivka, Pisarivka, Ivoljansky, Kianitsia, Mariino, Novosich, Krapivshchina, as well as Mala Korchakovka and Korchakovka. And today we are registering a pivotal moment. Two settlements from within that defensive line, Mala Korchakovka and Korchakovka, have already passed under Russian control. This means the second defensive line of the AFU, Armed Forces of Ukraine, on this sector is not merely under pressure. It has already been breached at multiple points. Russian forces have driven a wedge into this line, and two logical axes of further advance now open up before them. The first, movement toward Kostyantynivka and Pisarivka, a northwest vector. The second, an offensive from Korchakovka and Vuhledar toward Mian, Krapivshchina, Novosich and Kianitsia, a southwest and westward vector. If both axes are executed simultaneously or in sequence, Russian units will find themselves in a position from which an envelopment of the city of Sumy from multiple directions becomes feasible. Either a full encirclement or an operational half-encirclement that would make defense of the city extremely difficult. But pressure on Sumy is not coming from the west alone. It is multi-vector. East of the city, an active offensive is also continuing. Just yesterday, April 29th, the Ministry of Defense confirmed an advance in the Novodmitrivka area. Today, independent mappers published data indicating that Russian units additionally managed to straighten the front line north of Novodmitrivka, in the areas of Pokrovka and Mikhailivka, in the general direction of Krasnopilia. The fighting for Miropoli, a settlement on the northeastern flank of the Sumy direction, deserves separate attention. According to the North Troop Grouping, combat is currently being conducted directly within that settlement. This is highly telling. Russian forces are advancing on Sumy simultaneously from the north, from the northeast, and from the southeast. That configuration points to one conclusion: the Sumy direction is one of the top strategic priorities for this year, and resources are being allocated accordingly. Kostyantynivka. Direction, overnight correction and the threat of encirclement. Moving to the Kostyantynivka direction, and here the picture is no less significant. In terms of sheer volume of corrections over recent days, This sector leads all other directions. The night of April 29-30 proved no exception. Various sources published overnight data indicating that Russian units improved their positions on the eastern flank of the Kostyantynivka axis. Notably, this came immediately after the completion of the battle for Novodmitrivka. Rather than consolidating, Russian forces continued moving westward toward the city limits of Kostyantynivka and northward toward the settlement of Molocharka. The strategic logic here is worth examining carefully. West of Chasiv Yar, a Ukrainian troop grouping has been holding the settlements of Podolska, Chervone, Mykolaivka and Stenki, with Popasne and Verolyubivka further north. A number of analysts and mappers believe that Russian forces are actively considering the encirclement of this garrison. If the push toward Molocharka and the western flank is carried out, this AFU grouping will find itself in an extremely vulnerable position. Additional confirmation of the advance comes from objective control footage geolocated in the southeastern part of Kostyantynivka, specifically in the area of Tbiliska Street. The footage shows movement of Russian soldiers and a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone flying overhead. Based on this material, the map has been corrected. Russian forces are confidently holding the southeastern sector of the city and methodically pressing deeper. The Kostyantynivka direction is currently, without question, the most dynamic and event-rich sector of the entire Central Theatre. Kharkiv sector. The Kharkiv direction today, no changes. The front line remains stable, no active corrections have been reported. Keeping it on our radar. Dobropilya sector, bridgehead beyond the water obstacles secured. The Dobropilya direction is also sending an important signal today. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported a significant improvement of positions in the area of Novoalexandrivka, a key node on the road toward Dobropilya itself. What makes this settlement significant? It lies north of a modest but tactically important water obstacle consisting of the Hrushinka River, Druhi Yar Ravine, and Treti Yar Ravine. These are not large rivers, but they have served as a natural break on Russian advances in this area for a considerable period. Crossing water obstacles always confers a tactical advantage on the defending side. Fire can be concentrated at crossing points, tempo can be slowed, and the attacker can be worn down. Today, that Ukrainian advantage on this sector is gone. Russian units have already consolidated north of the water obstacles and, according to available information, are beginning to mass forces for further movement. The next targets are Vasilivka and Murin, located to the north and northwest. Russian drones are actively operating in this area, aviation is striking Ukrainian positions and logistics, and the tempo is steadily building. Zaporizhzhia sector, silence that speaks louder than words. And now we arrive at perhaps the most intriguing item in today's briefing, the Zaporizhzhia sector. More precisely, what we are not receiving from there. For days now, not a single meaningful correction, not from pro-Russian sources, not from pro-Ukrainian ones. Neither side is publishing any data on movements, engagements, or changes to the front line. For those who professionally monitor this conflict, this is one of the most telling signals possible. When both sides go quiet simultaneously, it means something serious is happening there, and neither party wants to reveal information before the current phase plays out. The most likely scenario, active fighting is underway in the areas of Huliapol, Verkhna Tersa, and Voskresenka, possibly a meeting engagement or a large offensive operation by one of the sides. Fighting in these areas began back in December 2025. Nearly 5 months have passed, and the information flow from there remains minimal and fragmentary. That in itself speaks to the high degree of secrecy around what is occurring. The East troop grouping, which is responsible for this sector, is also maintaining silence. The situation appears to be in active development, and the information blackout is likely to be broken in the near future. Watch for updates. The Zaporizhzhia sector may produce one of the biggest surprises of the coming days. West Africa, the Russian Africa Corps in Mali. A brief pass through the West African theatre. The Russian Africa Corps, operating alongside Malian government forces, continues to engage dispersed separatist groups across multiple areas of the country. Latest data, Russian units retain control of the former UN base located south of Kidal. the footage that appeared several days ago showing a Russian column departing the settlement has now been explained. It was an evacuation of the wounded, not a withdrawal. Russian forces are holding the base and, according to available information, are increasing the intensity of strikes against separatist positions within the settlement. Simultaneously, reports indicate that separatists were planning to assemble a strike group east of Gao to conduct a raid toward one of the smaller settlements. However, intelligence from Malian government forces and the Africa Corps succeeded in detecting the concentration of enemy forces in time, and strikes were conducted against the identified positions. There are also reports of a possible separatist incursion into the settlement of Gorma Rarus, located along the river in the central part of the country. The information requires verification. Overall, the situation in Mali remains tense, with fighting continuing across several dispersed sectors. East. Carriers, hypersonics, and oil at $120 a barrel. And finally, to the most geopolitically charged segment of today's episode, the Middle East. First item, the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford is leaving the Middle East theater and heading back to the United States. The story of this vessel over recent months reads like its own miniseries. Onboard fires, withdrawal to Cyprus, return to the combat zone, more technical issues. The official explanation given is the need for repair work. However, a number of analysts are offering a different reading of events. In their assessment, the Ford's return may be linked less to repairs and more to a repositioning in the context of a possible operation in the Caribbean, specifically one directed at Cuba. These are expert assessments at this stage, not backed by any official announcements, but the fact that such interpretations are circulating in analytical circles is worth noting. As for the regional naval grouping, the Bush Carrier Strike Group has already taken the Ford's place. This means two strike carrier groups remain present in the Middle East theater, continuing the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The Hormuz blockade is not simply a naval military operation. It is an economic catastrophe of global scale. As of today, approximately 2,000 vessels and around 20,000 sailors are trapped in the Persian Gulf area, on both sides of the strait. Oil prices continue to set new records. Certain grades of crude have today reached $120 per barrel. And this, by all indications, is not the ceiling. As long as the strait remains closed, the market will keep responding. Now, regarding the possible next phase of operations. Information is emerging about US intentions to deploy hypersonic missiles to the region. This is a fundamentally important development. The American side has invested enormous resources in developing hypersonic weapons, and the Middle East appears to be under consideration as a live-fire testing ground for these systems. The most obvious targets are either adversary air defense assets or deeply buried bunker facilities on Iranian territory. The logic is clear. Hypersonic weapons were designed precisely to penetrate modern air defense systems and to strike hardened, high-value targets. Real-world combat testing is an opportunity to validate actual performance characteristics rather than bench figures. If deployment of these missiles produces results, it could become a lever capable of compelling Tehran to return to the negotiating table on the question of reopening the Strait of Hormuz. If not, the conflict will continue to escalate, and the global oil market will continue to rewrite its record books. Strikes on the night of April 30th. Separately, on last night's strikes. According to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Russian forces deployed 207 drones to strike various targets across the country. This is a very significant figure, even by the standards of intensive weeks. The bulk of the footage came in from the Odesa region and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. On Odesa, a substantial amount of footage showing strike aftermath was published throughout the night. According to incoming reports, strikes were carried out against several targets, including one of the city's hotels. The most probable interpretation: the facility may have housed a temporary deployment point for AFU personnel, or the hotel was being used for other military purposes, as a command post, billet for troops, or storage. On Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, the strikes were equally significant in scale. Objective control footage shows a Geran-type drone flying over the city. Given the fire visible below it, the preceding strike had occurred just minutes earlier. Several sequential strikes were recorded across different points within the settlement. The Ministry of Defense has not yet specified the exact targets struck. However, if these strikes are considered in the context of events unfolding over recent days in the areas of Tuapse and Perm, it is reasonable to infer that they were of a counter-production or counter-logistics nature, targeting facilities linked to the assembly or storage of Ukrainian drones. That is the picture as of April 30th, 2026. Ahead lie the May holidays, possible ceasefire negotiations, and at the same time, visible escalation across multiple theaters simultaneously. The situation does not invite complacency. A huge thank you for spending this time with us. Special gratitude to everyone who supports the channel, the sponsors, those who hit super thanks, and everyone who simply watches and leaves a like. This channel exists because of you, and every reaction you give is a direct contribution to keeping serious, honest, no propaganda analysis going here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Until next time, take care of yourselves and see you soon.